The new owners, Daniel and Marissa Hale, never imagined anything unsettling about the quiet stretch of Benedict Canyon Drive, where they bought the old 1960s ranch house. The listing mentioned nothing unusual. A modest mid-century structure tucked behind dark hedges, a sloping driveway, and a lingering Hollywood charm that felt preserved, almost intentionally untouched. What they didn't realize not until neighbors cautiously brought it up was that the house once belonged to Elizabeth Montgomery, the star of Bewitched, who died decades earlier. On their first night, they were too tired to notice anything except how strangely still the air felt inside. Not cold, just motionless, like someone had turned off the outside world. Marissa remembered later that even the trees seemed frozen, their shadows stiff against the yard. But they chalked it up to exhaustion, the kind that makes ordinary things feel slightly skewed. The next morning began normally. Sunlight filtered through the long horizontal windows, lighting up the wooden floors that carried that faint cedar smell of old Hollywood homes. Daniel opened the back door to water the lemon tree and heard something unusual, almost like the soft click of heels behind him. Not loud, not alarming, more like someone shifting their weight on wood. He turned around, expecting Marissa, but the hallway behind him was empty. He didn't mention it at first. Houses make sounds. Old boards settle. And this home, even after its minor renovation, still held the bones of the 60s. But later that afternoon, when Marissa heard a faint tapping coming from the living room wall, the same quiet, rhythmic pattern, 2 taps, a pause, then one more, she froze. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Daniel pressed his ear close. The tapping stopped immediately, almost too quickly to be natural, as if whoever or whatever was making the sound realized they were being listened to. Still, neither of them wanted to sound paranoid. They joked about squirrels, about the house warming up to them, but the tension slipped in quietly, threading itself between their words, settling into corners of the rooms like dust no one wanted to acknowledge. The first genuinely strange moment happened on day 2. Marissa was unpacking in the living room when she found an old photograph tucked behind the lowest shelf of the built-in cabinet. A small black and white print, faded along the edges. It showed a woman, blonde hair, calm expression, unmistakably Elizabeth Montgomery, standing near the same brick fireplace now behind Marissa. But it wasn't the photo itself that unnerved her. It was what was written in neat cursive on the back. "Still here." Her stomach tightened. She called Daniel over, and for a few seconds they stared at the message, neither wanting to acknowledge the obvious. When they tried to search for cracks or gaps behind the shelf where the photo could have slid from, they found nothing. No space, no opening, no loose wood. The photo had been perfectly wedged, almost intentionally placed where a new homeowner would eventually find it. By evening, a subtle feeling began to follow them from room to room. A sensation not threatening but unmistakable of someone standing just out of sight, watching them, quietly, patiently. The neighbors finally spoke up on the 3rd night. An older woman named Ruth, who lived 2 houses down, stopped by with a small basket of lemons. She hesitated before speaking, picking at the hem of her cardigan. "You've moved into Elizabeth's old place," she said carefully. "Lovely home," she kept to herself. "Very gentle soul." Then she added, almost reluctantly, "Some people say they feel presence, I guess. Not bad, not frightening, just as if she never fully left." She tried to laugh it off, but her eyes betrayed something else, a seriousness, a quiet warning. That night, the house made no unusual sounds. No tapping, no footsteps, no creaking boards. But the still air returned the same motionless heaviness they felt on the first night. A silence so deep that they could hear their own breathing echo faintly against the walls. And just as they turned off the lights, the faintest scent drifted through the hallway. Lavender. Soft, fresh, unmistakably intentional. Neither of them owned lavender perfume. Neither of them had unpacked anything scented. And yet the fragrance lingered outside their bedroom door, calm, persistent, and distinctly feminine. They didn't say a word. They simply looked at each other, both understanding the same unsettling truth. Something in the house was aware of them. For the next several days, Daniel and Marissa tried to settle into their routines, pretending they weren't silently cataloging every unusual thing that happened inside the house. They moved from room to room carrying that same hesitant awareness, listening for sounds they hoped wouldn't come, watching shadows that seemed a little too still, noticing small details they didn't remember leaving untouched. The lavender scent became the first pattern they couldn't ignore. It always appeared in the same narrow stretch of hallway that connected the bedroom to the small reading nook. Never strong, never overwhelming, just a soft veil of fragrance that drifted through the air for a moment and then slipped away. It reminded Marissa of old theater dressing rooms she'd visited as a young actress. Powdery perfumes, faint floral residue, the kind of aroma left behind by someone who'd stepped out only seconds earlier. One evening, as they were preparing dinner, Marissa walked down that hallway and stopped dead in her tracks. The lavender was stronger this time, fresh, almost warm, as if someone had just passed through. And on the small table beneath the framed mirror, she noticed a smudge on the glass that hadn't been there before. Not a fingerprint, a streak, delicate and curved, like the bottom edge of a palm brushing lightly across the surface. She called for Daniel, and when he came, he looked at the mirror for a long moment before leaning in closer. "It looks like someone touched it," he muttered. Marissa swallowed. "Or leaned on it." They cleaned the mirror, hoping that would be the end of it. But the next morning, the streak returned, faint this time, almost shy, as if whatever left it wasn't trying to alarm them, only to remind them it was still there. The house had begun responding to them. Another pattern emerged during the late afternoons. Around 4 o'clock, when the sun dipped low enough to cast long golden beams across the living room floor, the air inside would shift. Not colder, not even noticeably different, just heavier. A stillness that pressed lightly around their shoulders, like the gentlest form of expectation, as if the house was waiting for something. On the 5th day, Daniel decided to test a theory. He set his phone on the kitchen counter, opened the voice recorder app, and left it running while they went for a walk. He didn't tell Marissa until they were halfway down the road, partly because he didn't want to scare her and partly because he didn't want her to talk him out of it. When they returned, the house felt calm, quiet in the way a place feels after holding its breath. Daniel grabbed the phone, scrolled through the hour-long recording, and frowned. There were no voices, no footsteps, no breathing. But twice, precisely twice, there was the same tapping pattern from earlier. 2 taps. Pause. 1 tap. Faint, but unmistakable. And the sound didn't come from the direction of the kitchen. It echoed closer to the hallway. "Maybe the house is shifting," Daniel offered weakly, but the look on his face betrayed him. "No house shifts with rhythm," Marissa replied quietly. That night, they finally opened the attic. The entrance was a small square panel in the hallway, ceiling one they hadn't noticed until Daniel caught a faint draft coming from its edges. He climbed onto a chair, pushed it open, and felt a breath of warm, stale air drift down. Dust floated across the beam of his flashlight, slow and lazy, as if disturbed for the first time in decades. Inside, the attic wasn't large, just enough space for an old trunk, a wooden crate, and a stack of weathered suitcases. The floorboards creaked softly under his weight, but something felt off. The dust near the trunk was disturbed, flattened in a half-circle shape, as though someone had been sitting there recently. "Dan?" Marissa called from below. "What do you see?" He hesitated. "Nothing, just old things." But when he crouched and opened the trunk, he saw an object that made his breath catch. An old handheld mirror, silver frame, ornate handle, and the faintest trace of lavender rising from it, as though the scent had been sealed inside for years and was only now escaping. He didn't touch it. He didn't have to, because resting beside the mirror, folded neatly despite its age, was a small handwritten note on stationery paper yellowed at the edges. "Please take care of my home." The signature had long faded, but the inscription carried the same elegant, looping handwriting as the photo they'd found days earlier. And at that moment, Daniel understood something that unsettled him far more than any sound or scent. Whoever was leaving these messages wasn't trying to frighten them. She was trying to communicate. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. The days that followed seemed to stretch longer than they should have, as if time inside the house had softened around the edges. Daniel and Marissa moved through the rooms more slowly now, each step feeling deliberate, cautious not out of fear, but because the air itself seemed to hold memories that weren't theirs. It felt almost impolite to rush. The mirror from the attic lingered in Daniel's mind. He hadn't mentioned it to Marissa, not the mirror, not the note beside it, not the strange warmth he felt when he leaned over the trunk. It wasn't secrecy. It was something else, something harder to explain. A feeling he couldn't shake, that the mirror wasn't just an object but a boundary, like the faint edge of someone's presence that would vanish if he acknowledged it too loudly. Marissa, meanwhile, was becoming more sensitive to the house's rhythms. She noticed the light more, the way it fell differently depending on the time of day. In the mornings, the sun stretched across the dining room table in soft ribbons. By late afternoon, those same ribbons bent slightly, as if passing through something an invisible shape, a space with weight. Not blocking the light, just bending it. One afternoon, while cleaning the built-in bookshelves, she found something else. A tiny indentation on the wooden trim at shoulder height. Smooth, worn down, like the mark left by years of someone resting a hand in the same habitual spot. It was positioned exactly where Elizabeth Montgomery would have stood if she'd faced the room the way Marissa often did, slightly turned, observing it without intruding on it. She placed her own hand against the worn spot, to fit more comfortably than she expected. That evening the tapping returned. But this time it wasn't the repeating pattern from before. It was a single, distinct knock coming from the wall near the television. A soft sound, careful, like someone politely trying to get their attention. Then another, and another, not frantic, not aggressive, just requesting. "Do you think she wants something?" Marissa whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel didn't answer at first. The hallway felt colder now, not icy, just touched with a subtle drop, like when someone opens a distant door. The lavender scent appeared again, faint but present, hovering near the archway leading into the living room. Then something happened that neither of them could rationalize. The television flickered on. Not fully, just a brief blink of light, the screen illuminating for a split second before returning to black. But in that instant, they both saw it, a frozen image, too quick to process completely, but unmistakably a frame from Bewitched. Elizabeth's face had appeared for that fraction of a moment, her expression calm, almost amused, like the way she'd looked directly into the camera after a mischievous line. Daniel stepped forward, slowly placing his hand on the TV's top edge. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. Felt normal, as if nothing had happened. "We unplugged it earlier today," Marissa said under her breath. "Remember? The surge protector." He did remember, and the cord still lay on the floor, disconnected. They didn't sleep much that night. Not because of fear, though fear had begun casting small shadows in their thoughts, but because their minds were moving too quickly, connecting dots, recalling details, trying to understand the pattern forming around them. The next morning, they decided something quietly, without discussing it outright. They needed to test the house again. They set up a small audio recorder on the shelf closest to the hallway, the place where the lavender scent always appeared. This time, instead of leaving, they stayed home, moving around the house naturally, talking softly, cooking lunch, washing dishes. They wanted to see if the house responded differently when they were present. When they replayed the audio that evening, something new emerged. A soft hum, low, rhythmic, almost musical. Not a voice, but a tone like someone unconsciously humming a familiar melody from far away. It lasted only a few seconds, fading in and out as if carried by a breeze that didn't exist. Marissa covered her mouth. "Do you hear it?" "Yeah," Daniel said, his voice shaking more from confusion than fear. "It sounds like," they didn't say the word, but they both thought it, a lullaby, something intimate, something performed only when someone feels safe or when someone wants you to feel safe. After midnight, the house grew quieter than before, almost expectant. The tapping had stopped. The lavender faded. Even the usual settling sounds of the old foundation seemed to withdraw into the background. Marissa woke around 3 a.m., not from noise but from a sense of being watched, not threateningly, but with concern, the way someone might watch over a sleeping child. She lay still, eyes open to the dark edges of the room, and saw nothing. But she felt something gentle, almost protective, hovering just beyond sight. In that moment she realized, if this was a haunting, it wasn't the kind that demanded fear. It was the kind that held history, memory, attachment. Someone wasn't leaving. Someone wasn't ready to. The night after the lullaby recording marked a shift, small, subtle, but undeniable. The house no longer felt merely aware. It felt engaged, as if something inside had finally decided to make itself known. Not dramatically, not with shocks or terrors. Instead, with a careful, deliberate patience, like someone choosing the right moment to speak after years of silence. The next morning, Daniel found the lavender scent stronger than ever, lingering at the base of the hallway in a soft, warm cloud. It didn't smell like perfume. It smelled like crushed lavender flowers, the kind someone might keep in a small pouch tucked inside a dresser drawer. He followed the scent to the reading nook, where sunlight spilled through the narrow window in long golden beams. And there, sitting neatly on the cushioned bench, was the handheld mirror from the attic. He froze. He hadn't brought it down. He hadn't touched it since the night he discovered it. Yet there it was, resting gently as if someone had placed it with intention. Marissa joined him seconds later, her breath catching. "It's moving," she whispered. "Daniel, she's moving things now." He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The moment had a strange clarity to it, not frightening, but intimate, like interrupting someone in the middle of a private ritual. Marissa reached out slowly. Her fingers grazed the silver handle, and a soft warmth spread through her hand, faint but unmistakable. She lifted the mirror carefully, turning it over, expecting perhaps another message. But there was only the reflection, her own face, pale from lack of sleep, eyes searching for something she couldn't articulate. Then she realized something unsettling. The reflection behind her, the hallway, looked slightly different in the mirror. Not drastically, just tidier, calmer, as if the house was being shown not as it was now, but as it once had been. She blinked, and the image shifted back to normal. She lowered the mirror, trembling. "She's showing us things." That night, they left the mirror on the bench and kept the lights dim, choosing not to disturb whatever was unfolding. The house felt alive with a quiet energy, the walls breathing with memories too delicate to fully reveal themselves. Around 10 p.m., they heard the soft tapping again. Not from the walls this time, but from the attic above them. 3 gentle taps, slow, rhythmic, patient. A call. An invitation. Daniel knew he had to go. He climbed the ladder with Marissa waiting below, the air thick with stillness. When he pushed the attic door open, the temperature inside felt different, not warm, not cold, just touched with the weight of a presence that had been waiting for years. The trunk was open, not wide, only a few inches, as if nudged by someone without physical strength. Inside, on top of the old costumes and folded garments, was a small envelope that hadn't been there before. Cream-colored paper, yellowed at the corners. His name wasn't written on it. Neither was Marissa's. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of stationery, the same type as the earlier note, with elegant handwriting in fading ink. "Thank you for seeing me." The simplicity of it hit him with a force he didn't expect. There was no warning, no request, no unfinished business. Only gratitude, soft, understated, and profoundly human. When he climbed back down, Marissa's eyes filled with tears. "She just wanted to be acknowledged," she whispered. "That's all. She didn't want to scare us." They sat together in the living room for a long time, the envelope resting between them, the house settling around them with a gentle hum. The air felt lighter now. Not empty, never empty, but peaceful. Like something long held had finally been released. In the days that followed, the lavender scent gradually faded. The tapping stopped. The temperature stayed steady. Even the strange bending of the light no longer occurred. It wasn't that she was gone. It was that she was at rest. A month later, while repainting the hallway, Marissa found the faint hand-worn indentation on the wooden trim again. She rested her palm against it, feeling an unexpected warmth, a trace, a memory, a goodbye. Daniel still kept the mirror in the reading nook. Not displayed, not reverently placed, just resting there, as if waiting for its former owner to check in on her house one last time. Sometimes, late in the evening, when the windows glow with the soft orange of sunset, they think they catch the faintest whisper of lavender drifting through the air. Not strong, not persistent, just enough to remind them she loved this home, and she was grateful someone else finally loved it too. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.